So I'm Beth Gertner. I'm the Director of Education at SVRI. SVRI stands for the Stout Voc Rehab Institute. We'll get into what that is in just a moment here. But yeah, that's me. So Brianne.
I'm Brianne Warner, the Assistive Technology Specialist here at SVRI.
Hi, everybody. I am Lynn Harjinsky. I am the Business Services Consultant for Wisconsin DVR, and the area I cover is Northeast Wisconsin. So I'm from the Upper Peninsula on the eastern part of the state down to Sheboygan County.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize for my voice. I'm dealing with a hoarse voice for the past couple of weeks, but my name is Chrissy Nyrink. I am a licensed professional counselor working with the state of Wisconsin as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and I am located in the Wausau area, so pretty much center of the state of Wisconsin.
All right, and as you may have noticed, we have two presenters from SVRI and two from DVR. This is a collaboration between Wisconsin DVR and the Stout Voc Rehab Institute. So Chrissy, if you want to give people a quick overview of what DVR is.
Absolutely, thank you. So DVR stands for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. We are funded federally and state. We're a federally and state funded program designed to help consumers obtain, maintain, and advance employment for those that have disabilities. We work with those consumers as well as employers and other partners. Our primary focus is serving individuals with disabilities who face a substantial barrier to employment by providing employment services and counseling to those that we work with. We also assist in providing in a range of services to enable one's ability to work, along with providing in training and technical assistance to employers regarding disability employment issues. DVR is located as a partner in about 22 job centers throughout Wisconsin. We also have 19 additional service locations throughout Wisconsin. And with technology, we are able to provide services in most locations.
Thanks, Chrissy. And SVRI, or the Stout Voc Rehab Institute, we're located in Menominee, Wisconsin. We're actually under the umbrella of UW Stout. So if you're familiar with Stout at all, that's where we live, work. And for those who may not be familiar, Menominee is not too far from the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. We're relatively close to the Twin Cities. But the Voc Rehab Institute, we're really focused, again, on impacting the lives of individuals with disabilities in a positive way. This is done through research services and education or training programs. So we kind of have a three-pronged approach to that. So we have a few services that we engage in. We partner with Wisconsin DVR on a few of those, assistive technology assessments, eligibility for DVR services, things of that nature. We're also involved with a few different research programs. And then we do training, continuing education for people who have some credentials that they need to keep up, things like that. So we're happy to be part of this collaboration. Just a quick note for everyone today. So this presentation was developed under a grant project from the Department of Ed. And I just want to kind of reinforce that everything that we've put together here today doesn't necessarily reflect the views of the federal government. So just quick disclaimer there. So our objectives for today, as I mentioned, we have a very diverse audience today, which is wonderful. We're really happy to have that. So we want to kind of start with some baseline definitions, make sure we're all coming at this topic from the same space. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is disability, what is universal design, what is an accommodation. So we'll kind of do some basic definitions and then build off of those as we go through the day. We also will explore accommodations specifically tailored to the manufacturing industry. There's some very unique things about working in a manufacturing setting and some unique accommodations that may come up in that setting that wouldn't necessarily from other settings. We're also going to talk about, how disability really relates to equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives that different organizations may have going on. And then towards the end of our presentation, we'll get more into really building that strong partnership between employers and employees and how we can leverage the business services team at Wisconsin DVR to enhance that partnership and, really find and maintain those wonderful employees. All right, so as I mentioned, starting with first things first, definitions of disability. So the definition that we're going to use today, and we're going to talk about a little more in depth on this slide, comes from the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Just want to point out that this definition is defining disability within a legal context, the ADA being a really important piece of civil rights legislation, but not every entity, not every setting is going to define disability in the same way. So for example, if you're an individual applying for Social Security disability, what the thresholds and standards and things like that that need to be met for Social Security disability are going to be a little bit different. Or, if you're talking to your physician, your conversation about disability, again, might be a little bit different based on the context. But for today's purposes, we're defining disability as a person with a disability being someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. So I kind of broke that down into 3 parts. Physical or mental impairment, pretty straightforward, but do want to emphasize it's that physical or mental impairment. So we're talking both visible and invisible disabilities. We're talking about physical things that may come up, chronic health conditions, mental health conditions. It's really a wide variety of things that may come up for people. That second part, substantially limiting, it's broad intentionally, but not necessarily every condition is going to meet that standard. So for example, seasonal allergies wouldn't be considered substantially limiting. Are they a pain? Of course. But, most people are able to still get through their day. They may need an over-the-counter medication or something like that to manage it. But, for our purposes, seasonal allergies wouldn't be considered substantially limiting. And then part 3, limiting one or more major life activity. So what is a major life activity? Again, very broad. A major life activity, these are things that you do every day or very commonly. They can even be things that you're not aware of, like bodily processes, like breathing, digestion, those types of things. So again, very broad. It's those body processes. It's those conscious things you do, like reading, writing, carrying out work tasks, engaging with other people, driving, accessing your community. So those major life activities, again, very, very broad. So the reason that we have this kind of vague terminology that we're using is so that we're including more people than we're excluding. The goal here really is to have this bigger umbrella that we can all fit under and have more people covered under this act. But again, it's going to be a little bit different place to place, but this is the definition we're going to go with for today. All right, and while I switch over, we have a quick audience participation section here. I didn't forewarn you about that. So I'm going to talk through kind of the instructions real quick, and then I'll throw it over to Chrissy to walk through the prompt here. But so on the screen, you should see a QR code. And additionally, there is also a web link as well. So you can either join via web link if you're on your computer or phone, or you can scan the QR code. So either one of those things, and you can join this. You don't have to create an account or anything like that. But if you can scan the QR code or join the web link and just answer, what disabilities do you think may need accommodations in the workplace? There's no wrong answer. Just feel free to throw those out there and we'll generate a word cloud. And I'll throw it over to Chrissy to kind of talk through that as responses are coming in. And I know I switched over to this response page, but there's still the QR code in the upper right-hand corner, or in the upper left, there's that web link as well, if people still need a little bit of time to get to the page to enter their responses. All right, Chrissy, it looks like we got quite a few people who have chimed in, and if you want to take over.
Absolutely. That is awesome. Thank you to all of those that have chimed in. It's really great seeing a variety of the different types of disabilities. As we're all aware, disability doesn't just have to be something physical. So thank you to everyone that has chimed in. Great, great feedback there. Thank you. All right. So just some common disabilities. This is obviously not limited, but things that come to mind when people think of disabilities tend to be more of those physical, the vision impairment, blindness, or low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, even acquired hearing loss. I know in the manufacturing world, years ago, hearing wasn't really something of a focus. So I think it's really great to see that employers are really stepping up their game on that hearing loss and having workers have their hearing tested. Other issues as mobility disabilities, using of a wheelchair, walker or cane, chronic pain, epilepsy, diabetes. With the current and future projected worker shortages, as we all know, talent can be hard to find, as well as retaining employees. People with disabilities represent an underutilized pool of skilled talent. So this one is common invisible disabilities. Many employers are aware of different types of accommodations for people with physical disabilities, but they may be less familiar with accommodations for employees with disabilities that are not visible, like those mental health conditions. Over the last several years, mental health awareness is becoming less stigmatized and more seeking out supports and services. As we all know, not all employees with physical or mental health conditions need accommodations to perform their jobs. For those who do, it is important to remember that the process of developing and implementing accommodations should not only be individualized for each worker, but should also include that worker's input. Accommodations vary, just as people's strengths, work environments, and job duties also vary.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about what disability is. We've talked about different types of disability. We've given some examples. So that kind of leads to the next part, which I like to think of as the why should we care? Why does this matter? Both for employers, for people who are helping job seekers, and just for people on an individual basis. Why is this important for us? So as you'll note on the screen, with these statistics here in the US, we have 1 in 4 individuals, we're at a little bit over 25%, that have identified that they have some type of disability. And this is coming from the CDC statistics. And then when we're looking from the World Health Organization, we're looking at about 1 in 6 individuals that are reporting that they experience a significant disability. I do want to note just the slight difference in wording there. So that 1 in 4 statistic is talking about some type of disability, and then the 1 in 6 is talking about significant disability. With a significant disability, we're really talking about that significant limitation in one or more major life activity, where some type of disability is a little bit broader. I think For a good example, like an individual who may have diabetes, each individual's experience with diabetes can be vastly different. Some people might be able to manage that really well with medication, diet, exercise, those types of things. Some individuals with diabetes may have a vastly different experience, may have really significant limitations in their daily life. So just want to point out slight difference in wording there, but you can also check out, we'll have those slides posted on the website, the link to the CDC infographic and the World Health statistics as well, if you would like to check out more. But as you can see from those stats, there's a really, really large percentage of us who identify as having a disability, a quarter of us in the United States. So even if we don't realize it, we know someone with a disability, several someones, odds are. So remember earlier when I talked about that broad definition, you can really see it showing up here. We really have a lot of people who identify as having a disability. Not only do we all know someone, is this important to keep in mind? Maybe we ourselves identify as part of this group, but individuals who have a disability, it's a really diverse group of people. There are people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, regions of the country, regions of the globe, age groups. So it really is a group that is incredibly diverse. And not all people who have a disability really identify as part of this group. Also, it might not be the only way they identify themselves. There are many ways that we identify ourselves, many groups that we fit into. And just because somebody may identify as having a disability doesn't mean that they don't have the same work goals, the same, drive to be active members of the community, the same kind of needs when it comes to interacting with people in the workplace. So I do think that is really important to point out as well. Some additional statistics here. These are showing some stats when it comes to participation of individuals with disability in the workforce. So when we're looking at labor force participation rates, and this is for those individuals who are 16 and older, but you'll see the gray bars are persons with a disability and the blue bars are persons without a disability. So we have much higher participation rates in the labor force in that blue category, so persons without a disability. And then when it comes to unemployment, makes sense then that we would see higher unemployment rates for individuals with disabilities. And this comes from US Department of Labor, those disability employment statistics. But the reason that I touch on these today, I think it's important to point out that yes, we've gotten a lot better about tapping into this pool of workers that we may not have as well in the past, and we've gotten lots better at that. But we're also going to see some shifts over time in these numbers as well. As I'm sure you have all talked about in your organizations, and we're all pretty well aware, the US population is getting older. So we have a higher percentage of individuals who are falling into those, 65 plus, 50 plus type categories. And as a result, we're going to have people who are working longer, past the typical retirement ages. Also, older persons are more likely to have a disability, particularly over the age of 65. So when we're talking about individuals with disabilities who are already part of our labor force, that number is only going to rise. There are a lot of disabilities that develop as we age. I mean, how many of us know somebody who has developed hearing loss over time or some sort of progressive illness or other medical condition? The older we get, the more likely we are to develop some type of disability. So we are going to need to be more and more aware of these in our workplaces and be more and more willing to accommodate them and make our workforces more universally designed, increase accommodations, things of that nature. So with that, I am going to toss it over to Brianne to talk a little bit about universal design.
All right. So universal design, I would say, is the large category of accommodations that we're going to cover. Universal design is the design and composition of an environment so that it can be accessed, understood, and used by all people, regardless of age, size, ability, or disability. It is the design of products, environments, and buildings so that they are aesthetic and usable for everyone. The application of universal design principles minimizes the need and use of assistive technology so that products are more usable by everyone and not just those with disabilities. So if everything is well designed with accessibility and usability, everybody will benefit. It is important to consider in specialty areas such as assistive technology, vocational rehab, independent living, and society. It looks at the usability of space within an environment or the workspace, and then it can be used within public buildings, walkways, and in the home. Some other examples of universal design could be parking lots, including ramps, doors, elevators, having different handles around the building, different seating options, making sure there's proper signage with proper verbalization and braille, lighting, railways, different counter heights, and then differentiated spaces.
I'm going to define for you what an accommodation is. And basically what it is, it's any change to the work environment or the job that enables a person with a disability to be successful or to enjoy equal employment opportunities, including promotions, raises, and recognition. The caveat is that the employee must meet the skill level required and must be able to perform the essential functions of the job. And this is going to occur through an open dialogue between the employer and the employee. There might be much discussion about what the employee is suggesting, and you may try it out a couple times and have different things in place to ultimately determine what is going to work. But ultimately, it is the employer's choice. And a reasonable accommodation must be effective. It must be only there to reduce employment-related barriers. It should not cause an undue hardship for an employer, meaning it shouldn't be excessively expensive, and it should not eliminate the essential functions or reduce production standards. So if everybody's required to make 10 widgets in an hour, so must the individual who has the disability who is requesting the accommodation. So a couple things just to keep in mind. Like I said, it has to be effective and it only reduces employment barriers. So when you're looking at the work site only, not things that occur at home for this individual. So some examples of what might be considered unreasonable would be, well, first of all, because disabilities take many forms, so do the reasonable accommodations, as Brianne, you heard from Brianne. And some accommodations may be apparent if the disability is apparent. So somebody who is using a wheelchair, clearly they're going to need a ramp to access the building. And it is much more difficult for those with hidden disabilities and more challenging. But I do want to give you some examples of what might not be reasonable. For example, creating a new position or holding that individual to a lower production standard. Remember, when you hire somebody to do a specific job, you do so because they have those qualifications. You are not required to provide personal care items or extend this to off hours. So you don't have to supply somebody to help that person with toileting assistance. You don't have to provide eyeglasses or hearing aids or mobility aids. However, if you require your employees to wear safety glasses, you may consider prescription safety glasses for those who require prescriptions. You do not have to provide transportation to and from work. It would be considered it may be considered unreasonable to move an employee to a new supervisor. You can if you want to, but you might want to also consider providing training to the supervisor to give them more information on how to work with somebody who has disabilities. And finally, you do not have to ignore poor conduct. If somebody is being a bully, it doesn't matter whether they have a disability or not. Poor conduct is not acceptable on the job. You just will want to document in the employee file like you would do with anybody else who doesn't have a disability. Next slide.
All right, so we have another audience participation section. All right, so as you can see on your screen again, we have another QR code up as well as a web link. So our prompt for this one is, what accommodations have you seen either in your current workplace or out in your community? So this could be something that you have seen in your day-to-day work or something that you've just seen out and about. Also, if you still have the window open from the first time you responded, you might not even need to scan the QR code. It might just take you there already. All right, seated work, job coaching, reduced hours, task lists. Those are all really, really great things. Modified schedules, anti-fatigue mats, labels, using a chair or a stool, breaks. Awesome. Yeah, a lot about kind of those slight alterations in schedule that can be really beneficial for people. Curb cuts, adjustable tables, a hearing aid that's also a form of hearing protection. Very cool. Tactile stickers, adaptive technology. Yeah, there have been a lot of advances in hearing aids, which Brianne would know a lot more about than I would, but they can do some really cool things now with Bluetooth technology and things like that. Elevators, commercial doors, standing desks. Yeah, wonderful. And, you know, a lot of these are general, you know, can be seen in many different workplaces, but some of them might be specific to manufacturing as well. Yep, laminated checklist, job sharing. Awesome. Sit to stand option. I myself have a sit to stand desk. Yeah, there's a whole wide variety of things that we may already be doing. You know, I do want to emphasize that we're not implying that people aren't already making accommodations. We just want to make you aware of ones you might not have considered yet. But I do know a lot of workplaces are really great about these things and about ergonomics and things like that. Flashing lights for sound, adjustable lighting. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we're just going to talk about a few different categories of assistive technology devices and other adaptations that might be seen around the workplace. The first one is working around equipment. These can include high-tech and low-tech options. So the first one would be installing flashing strobe lights on moving vehicles. This is essential for those who are deaf or hard of hearing so that they're able to see that strobe lights or flashing lights of equipment coming around a corner. Setting paths for travel. This could be a lighted pathway or colored or reflective tapes, kind of seen in the picture there. Installing a directional worker system that alerts people of oncoming vehicles, kind of the same as the flashing strobe lights. And then also installing industrial mirrors around the work environment. So coming around the corner, somebody who might not be able to hear or see the flashing lights can see it in the mirror coming around the corner. Mobility. This could include modified office equipment or workstations. A bunch of you guys mentioned that, like ergonomic office space. So having an adjustable desk, this could be a manual one that you raise or lower. It could be electric. A lot of desks now have a button you press that your desk can raise and lower. This could also include a tabletop desk that your computer sits on that raises and lowers as well. It could be having a ergonomic computer chair for back support, a keyboard, and a mouse that's adapted. This could include wheelchairs, walkers, and scooters. They're all considered assistive technology devices. So making sure that there's an accessible walkway for those, having open or wider doorways so that they're able to get through. Anti-fatigue matting for standing all day. Sometimes that gets really hard on the body, on the feet, back, if you're standing on hard surfaces all day. Making sure that the building has a ramp, automatic door openers, close parking spaces for easy accessibility. Air ride seats for heavy equipment. I know a lot of people that ride in those equipment, large machines that work every day. You know, the bouncing up and down is really hard on the body. So making sure you have either the air ride seats or the next one is the anti-vibration seats to kind of decrease that mobility all day and hopefully have a little less pain, fatigue. Automatic garage door openers, and then elevators. Some fine motor devices that you might see around a workspace are adapted keyboards, like I said before. These allow for a more neutral position of your arms and your wrists so that if you do have carpal tunnel or tennis elbow, it really decreases that pain and fatigue that you might get if you're at your computer all day. Having auto retractable box cutters. This allows so that you're not using your grip so much or your thumb if you don't have great thumb control. You're able to just kind of auto retract it back so you're not using it so much. Same with the alternative spray can. As you see in the picture, it just has a handle on top of it. So if you do have decreased fine motor control, you just need to use a less grip so that you're able to spray that spray can. Ergonomic and pneumatic tools. Using an eye gaze or head control systems for computers. These could be for people who are possibly wheelchair bound, quadriplegic, have no body control from the neck down. They're able to use either their eye gaze to control their computer or a head switch system. And then using grip aids for walkers, canes, utensils, and steering wheels. This can be any type of like tubing or they make specialized grips as well, but you just kind of slip it on top of your cane, a utensil. They make special ones for walkers to hang on to. That way you're not having to close your hands so much and you can have a wider grip on them to be able to use them. Some devices for visual impairments. Magnifiers, they come in all sizes, shapes. They have large ones, they have ones that go directly on the paper that you can read line by line. Making sure that there's large print materials around, having Braille, whether that be on your signage, any menu, any documentation or manuals that might be around, having a copy in Braille, color-coded manuals or outlines, talking calculators or tape measures, readers. Having glare guards on computers or any equipment with a screen can help those with low vision or that have a hard time with that blue light coming through. And then making sure there's accessible computer equipment and software such as Dragon Naturally Speaking or any speech-to-text software that might be included on the computer. Some hearing impairment and communication devices. Some of them are called assistive listening devices or ALDs. This can include FM and infrared systems, personal amplifiers, induction loops, Bluetooth, and hearing aids. So FM systems use radio signals to transmit sounds from a microphone. Infrared systems are kind of the same concept as FM, but they use infrared light instead of the radio signals. Personal amplifiers are portable devices that transmit sound via a microphone and a transmitter to certain headphones, to an earphone, or to a neck loop. And then an induction loop transmits sounds from a microphone. It uses an amplifier and wiring that kind of encircles a seating area or a listening area. It can also be used at counters and other small spaces to improve more one-on-one communication. And then you have the Bluetooth and hearing aids that kind of work, they work hand in hand now with hearing aids that are able to be connected to a bunch of things, Bluetooth, whether that's your computer, a phone, different devices around the workplace. Other hearing impairment and communication devices. You could also consult an audiologist when assisting an employee who uses hearing aids, kind of get a little more insight on maybe what kind. There's so many different varieties. Making sure there's closed captioning. This includes closed captioning telephones, as seen in the picture. They're able to kind of show the entire conversation. Also, if you have a presentation or if you have training videos, making sure that closed captioning is available. Use interpreting services to accommodate sign language users. Ensure good lighting and line of sight. Include written materials for everything. Allow noise canceling headphones, and then alerting systems. This could be any phone, could be your alerts app, reminders app, anything that kind of gives a vibration or an alert. And the last one is stress, pain, and organization. This is scheduled rest breaks or allowing longer breaks, allowing a flexible work schedule or possibly work from home or a hybrid, having those ergonomic workstations, reducing repetitive tasks for employees, allowing phone calls for support, refer to counseling, having a mentor-mentee program, using calendars and reminder systems, and then also using electric organizers.
And here's some more examples of accommodations in the upper right-hand corner, or I'm sorry, left-hand corner. This should be familiar to everybody. Ramps to access the building. In the upper right-hand corner are some adaptive controls for this individual who uses a wheelchair so they can turn the sink off and on and adjust the hot and cold water. Lower left hand corner is the barcode scanner, which can be used in warehouses and retail for somebody who needs to scan a barcode, so that information is there for them to access, and the very common automatic door openers that we've all seen. In the upper right-hand corner, electric scissors to make cutting things easier. A plug puller is in the middle because of somebody who may have gripping issues and can't grab that small plug. This device helps them pull that out. Upper right-hand corner with the adjustable desk or workstation. This particular example in the picture, it shows that the whole desk will rise up, but you can get those sit desk for stand desk. In the lower right, a universal turning handle to assist with that have to screw or unscrew something to give them a better grip. And the lower left-hand corner, the zero lift and tilt table, which is especially good if you've seen job descriptions or written job descriptions where the individual must lift 25 pounds. This is a device that helps with that lifting. So there may not be lifting from the floor as what many people imagine when they say they have to lift 25 pounds. It's just a matter of moving from one point to the next.
For those of you not aware, the US Surgeon General released a framework for mental health and well-being in the workplace last fall, following the COVID-19 pandemic. This framework has been centered on worker voice and equity within the workplace. We do have resources at the end that give our slide presentations or give the web addresses as well. But this framework is really around mental well-being in the work setting. Reports of the quiet quitting and the great resignation highlight how the COVID-19 pandemic shifted the way Americans live and work. The framework highlights 5 essentials for workers and organizations and businesses of every size to help leaders develop policies and practices that support the mental health and well-being of workers. The 5 essential human needs that create the foundation for a mentally strong and resilient workplace are those in the bigger circles. So, to break them down, the protection from harm. Companies must create the conditions for physical and psychological safety. To promote practices that protect workers, executives can prioritize worker physical and psychological safety, provide adequate rest to combat fatigue, normalize mental health support, and operationalize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility norms, policies, and programs. The next need is that connection and the community. Workplaces should foster positive social interactions and relationships to assure workers social support and belonging, a critical foundation for well-being. Recommended practices could include creating cultures of inclusion and belonging, cultivating trusted relationships, and encouraging collaboration and teamwork. The next one is that work-life harmony. This empowers employees with autonomy and flexibility to integrate work and non-work demands. Key components of this include giving people more control over how work is done, making schedules as flexible as possible, which I know a lot of you have already mentioned in our other slides, and then also increasing access to paid leave, respecting boundaries between professional and personal time. The next is mattering at work. As we all know, people want to know that they matter to those around them and that their work matters. Knowing you matter has been shown to lower stress in the workplace. Working can also provide stability to those with significant mental health. And there's quite a bit of research out there that has been conducted showing that those individuals that might struggle with mental health limitations, them engaging in employment can help to lessen those mental health symptoms. To create this culture, workplaces could provide a living wage, engage workers in workplace decisions, build a culture of gratitude and recognition, and connect individual work with the organization's mission. The last one is that opportunity for growth. Organizations must create more avenues to help workers accomplish goals and recognize their contributions to organizational success. Companies can achieve these goals by offering quality training, education, and mentoring, fostering clear and equitable pathways for career advancement, and ensuring relevant and reciprocal feedback. Such efforts then can be measured. Such efforts can also be measured with comprehensive and data-driven tools, or are able to self-assess, benchmark programming and services, and access resources to improve efforts. In order to continue to grow, organizations must be able to measure their progress and make the necessary changes to support employees' mental health and well-being. As most of you are probably aware, every employer is affected by the mental health crisis, now more than ever. Now, there are practical steps employers can and should take. It's no longer enough to acknowledge mental health challenges in the workplace. Now, here's a framework to help. There's now a framework to respond. So employees with disabilities can offer employers a competitive edge. Perseverance and problem-solving abilities often result from overcoming barriers people with disabilities have faced throughout their entire lives. Disability diversity can bring creativity, innovation, problem-solving skills, and commitment to the workplace, along with improved productivity and morale. Turnover, as we all know, can be costly. Studies have shown that employees with disabilities stay at jobs longer, reducing the time and cost involved in recruiting, hiring, and training new employees. People with disabilities represent an underutilized pool of skilled talent.
As I had mentioned, I am the business services consultant for Wisconsin DVR in the Northeast Wisconsin area. And I just want you all to know that we are statewide and we connect to employers to a larger integrated business services team. So we want to help you solve your hiring issues and challenges, helping to retain qualified individuals. And at no cost to the employer, we do provide these services, the recruitment assistance. We can match candidates to your job postings, and we can connect you to our workforce partners and even more. We are all participating in an integrated business services team to help employers in our area attract and retain talent. Next slide, please. So basically what we do is we engage in outreach to employers and help build these relationships. And the business services team that we participate with also have job seekers that they work with. And that can be the Office of Veteran Services, the Department of Corrections, Community Corrections Employment Program, job service and job centers, apprenticeship, the Workforce Development Board, Job Corps, or the Senior Community Services Outreach Program. And this outreach is individual. There's nothing that's cookie cutter about it. Each employer relationship and partnership is unique and may look different from another one. We do this a lot of times, thanks to COVID, we learned how to reach out to employers virtually, using email or even by phone. We've been doing a lot in person again, now that we've reopened up. But when we go out to a company, we want to see, what is this culture like? Is it a family-oriented company? Are there some rigidness that's happening? Is it already inclusive? We look to see, is this owned by a minority or a woman or a veteran? I always like to remember the 80-20 rule, where I want the employer to talk 80% of the time so I can learn about the company. What are the employer's needs? What are the struggles? What does the actual position look like that they are recruiting for? I want to get a tour so I can look at things like this, and I can look to see what might potentially be a reasonable accommodation situation. If the employer is a federal contractor, I'm going to ask if they know how much of their workforce is diversified. The recommendation for federal contractors is 7%. They may ask me about the wages. Are the wages that they are offering comparable to other companies with the same position in the area? So I do share that labor market information with them. Everything that we do is governed by WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And this was a law that was signed into law, I should say, on July 22nd, 2014 by President Obama. And this is designed to help job seekers gain access to employment, education, training, and other support services so they can succeed in the labor market. And also to help match employers with skilled workers they need so they can compete in the economy. We are kind of looked upon as experts in some ways, as far as accessibility, helping with accommodations. We work hard to dispel myths and stereotypes and get rid of these misconceptions that in many cases have been gleaned off of TV and movies and are not realistic at all. We provide windmills training to any employer upon request, and this is an employment diversity awareness training program that is free to employers. And a lot of times we like to target the supervisors, managers, business owners, the people that are making the hiring decisions. Along with our partner agencies, like I'd mentioned, who are part of our business services team, we help with recruitment and hiring assistance. We encourage employers to use jobcenterwisconsin.com. We'll help with on-site or virtual hiring as needed. We do like to provide experiential opportunities to our job seekers, and that might be in the form of a temporary work experience where a job seeker can come on site, learn about the job, learn to see if this is something that they might want to do as a career. Maybe they've had to change their career goals because of a disability they acquired because of an accident or a stroke or something like that. We also make sure that employers know about the work opportunity tax credit that they are eligible to receive when they hire somebody who has a disability, and it gives them a $2,500 credit on their taxes per each new hire. Next slide.
This is another interactive portion, the last one for the day. So you can either return to the same window that you had open before, or if you need to scan the QR code or get the link again, they're at the top of the screen right now. Sorry, I need to actually hit the share button for it to switch to the right screen. Sorry about that, folks. But prompt for this one is, after Lynn talked so much about the wonderful things that the businesses services team can do for employers and job seekers, just a yes or no. Have you yourself connected or know that your organization has connected with someone from the Wisconsin DVR business services team? Or if you are one of our out-of-state folks, have you connected with a business services team in your state? We'll just give people a little bit more time to respond.
Nice numbers. All right. Oh, we still got some numbers coming in.
Right. Yeah, it's looking like about roughly 3/4, little less, have connected with somebody from the business services team.
That's fantastic. Beth, if you want to move to the next slide then.
You bet.
All right. I'm glad to see that so many of you have already connected with your DVR business services team. For those of you that haven't, for Wisconsin attendees, here is your connection. Here is where you can find somebody in your local area. Like I said, I'm in the Northeast Wisconsin area, which is the dark green area to the east, the eastern part of the state. But depending on where you live, you can reach out to any one of my colleagues. And we are located at Wisconsin, dwd.wisconsin.gov/DVR, and you can find us there. Wonderful.
There's also, just so everyone knows, quick note, the heading on this page, the underlined DVR business services consultant contacts, that's actually a live link. So from the slides, you can take that link directly to the contact page.
Awesome. And like Beth said, for those of you that are attending from out of state, every state has their own version of voc rehab. It might be called something different, but you're going to have your own business services consultant, maybe under a different title, but you'll see them there. Thank you, Beth. Okay, just a couple of resources I want to make sure that you are aware of. First of all, DWD has an accommodation training library. I encourage you to check that out at some point when we're done here and look at the videos that are available to you. And on the right, if you want to click on Job Accommodation Network, askjan.org. This is kind of the Bible when it comes to accommodations. I access this one quite a bit. I encourage employers to access this website for any assistance for finding out what they can do. Let's click on accommodation search at the top, in the top blue menu bar there. And scrolling down, if you would click on just decreased stamina and fatigue. Yep, that's it. And first thing you see are on the kind of the white side of the screen, anti-fatigue matting, and other things, head supports for wheelchairs and various things that are useful. But if you want to narrow it down even further, if Beth, you can click on the plus sign by disability, and let's select aging. A lot of our workforce is aging. And now as Beth scrolls down, information is per accommodation, and scrolling down a little bit further, some questions to consider. How is this limiting the employee? And things you can click on. Okay. Some other things. How is this affecting their job performance? What specific job tasks might be problematic that you need to look at? And then you see the accommodation ideas. So I, for one, as somebody who's aging, memory loss is my thing. And so Beth, if you would click on that, please. What you're going to see are suggestions on how to help with that memory loss. There's apps that you can put on the computer or on the phone, calendars and planners. I know I'm a big lister. If I don't write it down and have a list, it's not going to happen. So all sorts of things that can be investigated. And Ask Jan also provides information on where to purchase these items. If it is a physical device to be purchased, it gives you suggestions on where to go to find these items. So do check that out. It's a great website. Okay. And then there are other slides or other resources that you can check out. We've got the U.S. Department of Labor has a lot of information, Office of Disability Rights, a lot of things that we go to might be Ask Earn, Employer Assistance and Resource Network. Disability In is huge in Wisconsin. There might be a national industry liaison group that you can participate in. So all these are great resources. What you can do, a campaign for disability employment that's targeted to employers to help them become a disability-friendly employer. Next.
All right. So that brings us to the end of our content today. Again, all of those resources on that previous slide, all of them are active links that will take you right to the web pages for those organizations. So definitely check out the slides from the web page so you can follow up with anything you might want to check out. We have all of our email addresses posted on the screen if you want to connect with any one of the presenters today. If we can't answer your question, we can at least point you in the right direction or point you to resources that can help you out. Additionally, we did have several individuals who chimed in with some questions when they were registering for this session. I know we're at about an hour at this point, so I know some people may have to log off, but we did schedule it for an hour and a half so that we'd have some time to address any questions people might have. So at this point, we'll start checking in with questions. So feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, the virtual hand raise in Zoom, if you would like to do it that way, whatever works for you. But just to give people a little bit of time to pop them into the chat if they would like, I'll just kick off with a question from registration. So I feel like this is a good question for the DVR team. Should job seekers who know they would need an accommodation to do a job, when should they disclose that information that they need an accommodation? Should they disclose that before they're offered a job, while they're looking for one, or after they've been offered a job? Or at what point in the process is it good to talk to a potential employer about an accommodation?
Well, I'll start off on this one. Somebody who has a disability can disclose that they have this disability anytime during the hiring process. So it can be while they are applying for the job, it can be during the interview, it can be on their first day of the job, and it can be after they've been working there for months or even years, because as we learned today, disability is going to be that one demographic we all have the potential of entering through disease, accidents, or aging. My recommendation is Number one, if the company advertises the accommodations, if needed during the process, disclose right away. But it really is going to go down to that comfort level of that person, because a lot of times people don't disclose because they're afraid it will affect them negatively. If it's an obvious disability, I would say, somebody using a wheelchair, somebody who has missing a limb, go ahead and talk about it right away and talk about how this disability is not going to impact your ability to do the essential functions of the job. Chrissy, did you want to add anything?
I just want to add, Ask Jan again is a great resource to point somebody to, on that disclosure. There's can be soft disclosure, whatever the disability may be. Important to remember though is any form of disability, somebody that has lived with a disability of any sort has really had to overcome a lot of obstacles and challenges already in their life, given that disability. So I think changing the shift of how we view a potential employee that might have a form of a disability, getting to know a little bit more about what that disability might be and how best can we all work well together.
They will also be more inclined to disclose if they know that you as the employer, like during the interview process, you're showing that it is a safe place for them to do so. So keep that in mind as well.
There is a question in the Q&A. It is, what proof or documentation can we ask for to confirm they have a disability?
I can start with that.
Okay.
When somebody claims that they have a disability, if it's an obvious disability, you don't need any paperwork. But you are able to request the minimal information from the doctor to show that they have the disability in order to determine, to help with that accommodation process. But it's not carte blanche to look at everything in their medical history. And it's not even a requirement. If you take them at face value, then that's fine.
Any suggestions for accommodations or assistive technology for individuals with back pain or hand pain?
Yeah, there's so many out there as far as hand pain. You could, for devices, I mean, there's like grips you can use to decrease, I guess, the amount that you need to grab items. Like I kind of talked about, adding, there's special like tubing and stuff you can put on things. Wearing braces probably is your best option just for that. Otherwise, there's so many, it's hard to say. Adaptive keyboards, that way your hands are more neutral. Like I said, adding those grips, anything to decrease the amount that you need to have a tight grip on any tools, any products that you're using. Back pain, having a good lumbar support, chair, making sure that you have a cushion so that you do have proper posture in the seating department, for equipment even, making sure that you have those, maybe the air rides or anti-vibration seats, just to take that pressure off your back. Yes, and somebody wrote TENS devices work very well as well, yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Beth, can I also address in the chat, people are talking about an assistive device loan program. This is state of Wisconsin, but I know other states have it as well. Ours is called WisTech. It is an assistive device loan program. It's wonderful. It's through the Centers of Independent Living. You can go online, you can rent out or loan pretty much any device that you think that you might need. You can trial it, days, weeks, kind of depends on what it is. It is specific to a region though. So make sure if you go on the website, somebody thankfully posted that on there. You have to make sure if you find one that it's in, you can only loan it from like your region. So if you find it from say Menominee, but you live over by Green Bay, they're not going to allow that. So make sure you find one close to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianne.
Also, if I can say one more thing, also your local ADRC, Aging and Disability Resource Center, a lot of times they have things like walkers and that kind of thing that they loan out as well.
I know there are some regions this is more so for personal devices that do have kind of a like reuse, recycle kind of program where if you say had a family member who needed like a riser for the restroom or a shower chair or something like that, there are a lot of areas that also have agencies where you can, turn those in so somebody else could use it, because a lot of those things can be easily cleaned and reused by other people. So that's a kind of lower cost way to get some of those assistive devices if you're looking for something in your home. Just wanted to mention that as well. I did have another couple of questions from registration. What types of jobs can be accommodated for workers who need to sit all or most of the time, especially individuals with limited skill sets?
Well, I would start by saying that any job that is a stationary job to begin with is going to be a potential for offering that seated option. So maybe assembly, if they have a workstation, that kind of thing. And of course, a lot of administrative positions would be seated as well, or could be seated. Cashiers can be working in a retail environment and have that stool.
If I can also add, this is really where kind of that what is a reasonable accommodation comes into play. If somebody is performing in a job and now they've had a change in their abilities to do that job, requiring where they're having to be sedentary and sitting, it's going to come down to the employee and the employer as to what is a reasonable accommodation. So if somebody is no longer able to do their job, is there other areas that they could try out? At the end of the day, again, as an employee or employer, you have a common goal and you want your employees to either be performing or not perform. We all want them to be performing. So the Ask Jan, the Job Accommodation Network, is really a great website that has a lot of different resources for not only employers, but also individuals. And keep it in mind that anyone with a disability can happen to any of us at any given point in time. So I think that website is just a really great overview of, for employers as well as those employees.
Awesome. Thanks, Chrissy. I have one more question from registration and then also a comment from the chat. What are some accommodation options for blind or low vision employees to navigate the manufacturing floor?
Oh, that's a great question. Specifically for manufacturing floor, kind of like I said before, making sure maybe like alerting sounds, alerting like on equipment, making sure that those who are blind or low vision know that equipment possibly is coming around the corner. Making sure you have the proper signage, braille, large print, having contrasting manuals and stuff available so that they're able to see them. Even this could be something that they come in with, but they make talking and loss of words. I'm sorry. I know what I'm trying to say, so I'll stick it in there if I have it. But there's just so many different things that you can do. Yeah, the Ask Jan website again has more specific based on just that, but I will throw some in there when they come to mind.
I also want to add, Brianne, it might be specific to your location as well. Each physical space is a little different. So,
Right.
if people want to connect with you or any of us about how do I adapt my space? We welcome that as well.
Yeah, there's just so many different devices. It's endless, depending on if you're on the floor, if you're in an office. There's so many different devices and computer applications, phone applications that you can use. So yeah, feel free to ask, to reach out and be a little more specific.
And again, go to Ask Jan. It's our Bible, kind of.
And then I had one more comment from the chat talking about a client that they're working with who had spent their life in manufacturing but developed back problems. This individual then went back to school to earn a degree in CAD and is struggling to find a position where they can use this new educational experience that they've completed. They don't necessarily need any accommodations, really just need an opportunity. So thanks for that comment. I wanted to highlight that comment because I do think, even though we've been talking about accommodations throughout the course of this presentation, I think it is good to point out that a lot of times people just need an opportunity. So if you're an employer or a recruiter, keep in mind that, DVR and other vocational rehabilitation agencies work with folks who may not fit into like a stereotypical mold or may not fit into the idea that we have in our head for a position. But that doesn't mean that they don't have wonderful candidates. Sometimes people just really need that opportunity and that chance to show off those skills and those talents that they have. So I do think it's important to point that out, and just a reminder to anybody who is in a position to hire or post about positions to maybe kind of expand what you thought the person who might fill that position could look like, because it might be somebody, the perfect fit might be somebody completely different than you ever could have imagined. So just wanted to point that out. Thanks for that comment. All right, I've gotten through all of the questions that I have. Before we say goodbye, any last questions from the rest of the group? All right, thanks, Arthur. So Arthur asks, what type of environmental accommodations have you implemented with a manufacturer? What ways could you modify a specific machine / workstation to be accessible for a recently hired individual with a disability?
As far as what ways you could modify a specific machine or workstation, again, it's so specific to what machine or workstation it is. Placing anti-fatigue netting on the floor would be huge. A lot of it, as I've seen in like manufacturing, would be adding levers to things for people maybe with like range of motion so that they don't have to reach as much. Raising things off of, if it's like lower, making sure it's higher so they don't have to bend down so much. If they have to reach high into cabinets or somewhere, making sure things are lowered to table height. There's just so many, it has to be specific to the individual and the machine. Adding computer, if they're working on a computer, making sure that there's different software programs on there that they could use. If they need a speech to text software to make sure that they can run it, or even a text to speech. Otherwise, if you want to email me more specifics, I can definitely help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like knobs. I showed a
Mhm.
picture of that device to help with turning knobs. That might be something, like Brianne says, though, it is specific to what exactly the machine looks like, the higher lower workstations, and that sort of thing. I've seen some employers, they have their tools hanging from the ceiling, so they just reach up, use the tool, and then it pops back up, and it's a very narrow range of motion, so they can grab it. It's not something that they're lifting that's heavy, but yeah.
I also want to say a lot of times, and this could be anybody, but having proper body mechanics and making sure that there could be like posters on the wall or just a handout somewhere that shows how to move around their workstation. So making sure they're not, using their back to bend, making sure they use their legs, making sure, it's just, there's so many body mechanic things that eliminate, hurt on the job. So making sure those are also being shown. And yeah.
All right, and then one other question that came in the Q&A, and this question is, what's the #1 disability that you've seen that is the most difficult to place within the workforce? So I used to work in supported employment, which is individuals with, or I primarily worked with individuals with developmental disabilities, and I job coached and assisted them at work. So in terms of this question, I don't really think that there is an answer to this question, because when it comes to disability, it's so broad, and an individual's experience with a different condition or impairment can be so different depending on who they are, depending on how they have adapted to it, depending on their supports. It can just be so vastly different person to person that I wouldn't say there's like one thing that's incredibly difficult to place. Also, like in terms of placement, it's really looking for a work environment that works well for that person. So I don't think there necessarily is an answer to that question. Like, there's one type of disability that's like super hard to place. Of course, people with more significant limitations, like the folks that I used to work with, it is more difficult to find them employment. But, a lot of folks with developmental disabilities who are out working, they might have a job coach who checks in on them or who works with them regularly. So there are, supports that exist out there, even for people who might have more significant limitations. So, yeah, anybody else have anything to add to that question? All right.
I would just say, be creative and think out of the box.
Agreed. All right. Well, we've touched on all of our questions. If you have something else that occurs to you later, or you want to connect with us on a specific issue, please do so. We would love to hear from you.